The Green Bay Packers closed out the preseason with a dominating 30-7 win over the Baltimore Ravens. But which players helped their cause to make the roster and which players hurt themselves? We're going to talk about that and some of the tough decisions ahead on this episode of the Daily Packers Post. Gil Martin here, and welcome to the second episode of the Daily Packers Post. You can read all of our content, by the way, at thepackerspost.com, so make sure you check that out, and the link to the website is in the show notes. Green Bay with a nice 30-7 win over the Baltimore Ravens to close out the preseason with a 2-1 record, and basically looking really good in games 1 and 3 and really shaky in game 2, but look, let's face facts here. It's the preseason. More than 30 players did not even dress for this game. Almost none of the starters played. None of the significant role players played. Matt LaFleur took this opportunity to play the guys who are fighting for roster spots, fighting for spots on the practice squad, and give the coaching staff and the front office a chance to evaluate those players and see what they can do. As far as guys who really helped their cause, I'm going to start with Emanuel Wilson. The running back, obviously, questions as to whether there was room for him on the roster. Marshawn Lloyd still out with an injury. A.J. Dillon out with an injury. Probably wouldn't have played anyway. Josh Jacobs did not dress. So Emanuel Wilson, who was the NFL's leading rusher in the preseason a year ago, trying to make his mark and earn a spot on the roster. He did very well, averaging 4.7 yards per carry, 52 yards on 11 carries. Also caught 2 passes for 26 yards, including a 20-yard reception where he did a lot of good running after the catch. I would have to say that Emanuel Wilson helped his cause and probably will be on the initial 53-man roster one way or the other, depending on, again, Marshawn Lloyd's and A.J. Dillon's availability to start the season. Then there was the battle for wide receiver. And what we've talked about is that there are 3 players essentially going for at least 2 spots. If you keep 6 receivers, and that's what they did a year ago, sometimes they've kept 7, but if you keep 6, you got 4 spots all but guaranteed with Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, and Dontavian Wicks. And then your next tier, the next 3 guys battling for those roster spots, Bo Melton, Malik Heath, and Grant DuBose. Well, in this game, I think Malik Heath helped himself the most. Heath just led all Packer receivers with 4 catches, had 39 yards, scored a touchdown, had 4 catches on 5 targets, and again, just showed what he's capable of doing. I think Bo Melton also helped his cause. Yeah, he was only targeted twice, only had 1 catch, but it was a very, very good 18-yard touchdown grab where he was in the end zone in between 2 defenders. The ball was thrown a little bit behind him, and Melton not only separated from both defenders, but managed to twist his body around and make the catch and hold on to the ball after a little bit of contact. I think Bo Melton, again, after a bad first preseason game, did better in the last 2 games. Now, Grant DuBose has been outstanding throughout training camp, throughout the first 2 preseason games. Did not see as much action against the Ravens on Saturday. Was targeted once, did not have a catch. And so now the question becomes with Grant DuBose, did he do enough to earn a roster spot? Could the Packers keep 7 wide receivers? Could they just keep 6 and try to sneak one of those 3 guys on the practice squad? Out of those 3, I think DuBose might have the best chance of being on the practice squad. That is going to be a difficult decision for Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur and the coaches to figure out at the end of the day. On defense, some guys who are definitely on the bubble, helping themselves for sure. Kristian Welch, again, the Wisconsin native, having another really strong game. He had an interception for the second straight game, also tied for the team lead in tackles with 5 combined tackles, broke up 2 passes. I mean, this was another strong performance. And Welch last year was a special teams ace, did not even see a snap on defense. Over the last couple of preseason games especially, I think Welch has shown he can contribute on defense, and he may need to do that. It's tough with the numbers at linebacker. We'll see whether or not he's done enough to earn a roster spot. I think they will try to sneak him on the practice squad if they don't have a roster spot for him. But boy, he certainly made it tough for the front office to figure out what to do. Another player who I think had a really strong game is rookie linebacker Tyron Hopper. I know a lot of people thought Hopper was a reach when the Packers drafted him in the 3rd round. He also tied for the team lead with 5 tackles, including 1 tackle for loss. And I'll tell you, this kid can hit. When he's running downhill, he hits you. You feel it. I like the way he has played, and I give him a lot of credit. And then the third defensive player that I think really stood out, you got to talk about Arron Mosby. And again, Mosby, it's a crowded defensive line, an edge rusher. He, I think, guaranteed himself a spot on the practice squad. Whether or not they'll make room for him on the 53 initially remains to be seen. But he had a sack, forced a fumble that was recovered by Anthony Johnson Jr. for a touchdown. Also broke up a pass and, forced a fumble. So, and intercepted a pass. Can't ask for much more from Arron Mosby in this game. He played exceptionally well and helped his chances of sticking around in Green Bay. Now, the battle for the backup quarterback spot, also interesting and important. And I think Matt LaFleur did the right thing by sort of giving each quarterback 2 series at a time so that, both Sean Clifford and Michael Pratt got time with the starters in this game, who were probably the 2nd or 3rd string, and then, with the 3rd string or 4th string guys as well. So similar stats for the 2 of them. Clifford finished 6 of 14 for 53 yards and a touchdown. Pratt, 8 of 12 for 80 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Pratt, a little higher on the quarterback ranking, but they're pretty much identical. 78.5 rating for Pratt, 77.4 for Clifford. One of these guys is going to be the backup quarterback. And I think it's going to come down to this. I think Clifford is probably a little bit more ready to go into a game now because he has 1 year of NFL football under his belt. I think he has the more immediate result, but Pratt, I think, has a higher ceiling. I think he has a better arm. Overall, you got to pick one of these guys to be on the roster and try to sneak the other on the practice squad. Do you go for the guy with the higher ceiling, in my mind, in Pratt, or do you play it safe and say it might be easier to stick, pick the guy who you think it'll be easier to get through waivers and put him on the practice squad? I have the feeling that Clifford is going to be the backup, but I think Pratt deserves the job. And it would be very, very frustrating to me to see Pratt let go or lost on waivers. Pratt, a little shaken up, trying to make a tackle on that interception, just had the wind knocked out of him, came back into the game, and he appears to be okay. Got to give credit to the offensive line. I know we're talking about the backups here or even 3rd string guys, but, Telford, Smith, Monk, Newman, and Glover were the starters, and we just saw a really strong play from this unit. The run blocking, which was a big problem a week ago, well, the Packers rushed 39 times for 193 yards. That's almost 5 yards a carry. All 3 running backs in this game, Ellis Merriweather, Nate McCrary, and Emanuel Wilson, all broke at least one run of 10 yards or more. overall, a solid job. And oh yeah, in pass protection, neither Clifford nor Pratt was sacked in this game. So these offensive linemen did a good job. One guy who happened to struggle, though, in his limited reps, Caleb Jones, maybe they'll stash him on the practice squad again, but I think his chances of actually making the roster went down after the strong performance by a lot of these other players and his kind of shaky performance in this game. The other big battle that I think is going to be decided in the next few days, remember, Tuesday is cut down day, but the other big battle in my mind is the kicking battle. And this was interesting. Early on, it really looked like Anders Carlson was going to lock things down. He kicked a impressive 54-yard field goal on the opening drive. That set the tone for the Packers and made, both of his extra point attempts. He looked like everything was going great. And then he tried later on in the game a 32-yard field goal, which is a chip shot. And he missed it wide right. And it's ironic. The big weakness Carlson had last year was missing wide right and kicking between 30 and 39 yards. And it wasn't just field goals. Remember, extra points are also now, with the new rules, between 30 and 39 yards. And he missed 5 of those last year. Excuse me. Clearly, that miss hurt Anders Carlson. Now, Greg Joseph hit a 36-yard field goal. And then in the third quarter, closed out the scoring with a 55-yard field goal. And again, if you want to compare, Carlson just hooked his 54-yarder inside the uprights. Joseph went right down the middle. And, early in camp, it looked like Joseph was ahead of Carlson. Later on, Joseph's performance kind of fell off. Carlson kind of picked up his performance. I get the feeling Carlson is going to win this battle initially, that the tie goes to the guy you drafted, the guy who has the stronger leg, the guy who I think Rich Bisaccia is convinced he can, work with him the way he worked with his brother a few years back with the Raiders and, get the consistency out of Anders Carlson. But I also think that Brian Gutekunst is going to scour the waiver wire after the initial cuts are made and look to see if he could find another kicker that he's willing to bring in to either be on the practice squad or to even replace Anders Carlson if it comes to that, depending on, if he sees someone he really, really trusts and believes in out there who he thinks is clearly better than Carlson. So I think Anders Carlson is likely to win the battle, but he may not emerge as the ultimate kicker in week 1. So cuts are on Tuesday. And then they have to go from 90 players on the roster to 53. And then, of course, 24 hours after that, you could start signing 16 players to the practice squad. Now, the Packers have also designated third kicker, Alex Hale, as their international player program participant. So he can be on the practice squad as a 17th player. He would get an exemption. Why? He's from Australia, so they can use that exemption on him. We'll see, whether they bring in another kicker or they just stick with having Hale as available and on the practice squad, a guy they could elevate at any time. If in the event that they lose a little confidence in Carlson, we'll see. But this is an eventful week. You have the cut downs, the practice squad signings, and then, Packers are going to be off Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. They regroup Wednesday after cuts and begin preparations for week 1 in Brazil against the Philadelphia Eagles. The preseason is over. Training camp is officially over, and now we begin preparation for the real thing. I can't wait for week 1 in Brazil against the Eagles. That's going to do it for this episode of the Daily Packers Post. I'm Gil Martin. I am the writer and founder of thepackerspost.com. You can check out all of our content there. We're going to be here all year long talking Packers football here on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe and join us for that. Have a great day, everybody, and thanks for listening to and watching the Daily Packers Post.